Hey guys, tonight we're crawling deep into a world without central heating, socks were optional, and insulation meant a sheep in your lap. Imagine waking up before the sun, your breath a mist in the air, toes already numb, and the only thing between you and the icy ground is a straw-stuffed mattress that smells like last month's onions. We're going way back, right into the freezing, muddy heart of medieval peasant life. You're not just watching, you are the peasant tonight. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. Let's see who's freezing in real time. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through thick morning mist, the kind that sticks to your skin like a damp wool cloak. The mud is relentless, greedy, wet, and sucking at your heels like it's trying to eat you alive. You forgot your wooden clogs again. Or maybe they cracked last week and no one could spare the nails to fix them. So, it's bare feet for you. Mud squishes between your toes, cold and indifferent to your dignity. Welcome to December in your little village, where the path from your cottage to the pigsty could double as a swamp. The pigs, by the way, are faring slightly better than you. They're fat, warm, and sleeping under a heap of hay that you yourself are a bit jealous of. Historians still argue whether medieval villages maintained any kind of road system or just collectively decided, let's let nature win. Either way, your path is half frozen sewage and half frozen dreams. The wind slices sideways through the village. No trees to block it, those were chopped down for firewood weeks ago. You're wrapped in a wool tunic stiff from yesterday's sweat and today's frost. It's itchy and smells like wet dog, but it's your warmest lair. Also, your only lair. You duck your head as you pass the blacksmith's hut. Smoke curling from the forge makes you pause. For a moment you think about lingering there, pretending to need something reshod. Just a moment's warmth from that fire. But then you remember, last time you lingered, the blacksmith's apprentice threw a frozen herring at your head. Fair enough. Back at your cottage, which technically counts as a home, but feels more like a single-room experiment in human discomfort. Your breath forms clouds in the dim light. The door doesn't shut tight. A cold draft slithers across the dirt floor like a ghost that's mad about taxes. Inside, your family's already up. The air smells of damp wool, boiled cabbage, and humanity. You nod at your father, who is massaging life back into his frost-bitten fingers. Your younger brother is shivering into a wooden bowl of watery porridge that's doing more emotional support than heating. One of the fringe beliefs among villagers is that eating a raw onion in the morning builds warmth from the inside out. I tried it last week. All it built was loneliness. You huddle near the hearth, a blackened pit in the wall that coughs smoke more than fire. There's a smoldering log left from last night, and you pray it hasn't gone completely cold. Fire is life here, and maintaining it is sacred. You blow softly, nursing a glow from ember to flicker. The heat touches your nose and you nearly weep. The chimney is just a hole in the roof, by the way. On windy nights, it doubles as a wind tunnel. On rainy days, it's a bonus waterfall. But it does one important job. It prevents you from dying of smoke inhalation. Probably. You hear your neighbor coughing again through the paper-thin walls. She's been sick for days. There's no doctor, of course, just old Mags, who says she can read bones and once cured a goat's limp with salted beetroot. Your neighbor's only medicine is sleep and hope. Still, you must head out. There's ice to chip from the well and no one else is doing it. So you grab the iron bucket, so cold it sears your skin, and step into the gray-blue morning once more. You pass other villagers, all hunched and red-nosed, steam rising from every mouth like you're all dragons with poor fashion sense. Down at the well, the rope is frozen. The crank creaks like a ghost ship. You spit on your palms and try anyway. Eventually, you break through the ice crust to the bitter cold water below. You think about jumping in for warmth, but then think again. You trudge home. Your feet feel like stones. Not metaphorically, actually like stones. You imagine chipping them off and replacing them with hooves. Your cousin claims someone in the next village did exactly that after frostbite. Historians still argue whether that was folklore or just one very committed prank. Once back, you check your little pile of firewood. 2 sticks and a twig. You sigh. Time to choose between a warm evening or a warm breakfast. It's a classic dilemma. You go with breakfast, gruel with a single potato slice, gently warmed by optimism. You eat in silence. The walls creak. Outside, the wind moans like it's auditioning for a horror story. You stare at the fire. It's all you have, really. That and the hope that this winter won't be the one that finally breaks your fingers off like old carrots. Your dog curls beside you, not for affection, but because you're warmer than the floor. Fair trade? You don't pet him. You don't have the energy. But you both understand each other. You stare into the tiny flame. It dances weakly, almost shy. You remember the warmth of summer, not the season, but the one hot day in July when your sweat actually served a purpose. You cling to the memory like it's a blanket. Then, someone farts under the covers and ruins everything. The thatched roof doesn't leak just water. It leaks every ounce of hope you've ever had about warmth and comfort. The frost creeps in like it owns the place, settling on the edges of the straw bundles above your head. You can even hear the tiny crack as ice crystals form inside the wreaths, like winter's cruel little lullaby. You're lying in your bed, or what passes for one. A low wooden frame stuffed with straw, sometimes hay if you're lucky, topped with a thin wool blanket that itches like it's made from regrets. There's no separate bedroom. Your entire family lives, eats, snores, coughs, and occasionally argues in this one single room. The pigs sleep just a few feet away in a corner pen, and you envy their thick hide and their complete lack of concern for social niceties. The walls are wattle and daub, sticks woven together and packed with a delightful mix of mud, dung, and maybe some straw if someone got generous. And that blend? It hardens and insulates about as well as a wet tissue. There's a constant breeze that hisses through the gaps, whispering the phrase, "bad life choices," over and over again into your ears. You roll over, pulling the itchy blanket tighter. Your breath puffs out in a cloud. It's so cold inside that your family's shared body heat only manages to keep things above deadly. Not comfortable, mind you, just not dead. One of the younger kids kicks in his sleep, knocking over the chamber pot. There's a slow, sloshing sound, followed by your mother's sleepy voice muttering a curse that doesn't exist in Latin, but absolutely should. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants purposefully arranged their homes to keep livestock inside during winter, or if it was simply necessity meeting desperation. Either way, your living space is very much shared with grunting, farting animals that are objectively warmer than you and smell better than Uncle Ulrich. In the daylight hours, the thatched roof seems charming from the outside. Tourists in the future will romanticize it, maybe even stay in recreations on purpose, with overpriced bread and heated toilet seats. But for you, it's not charming. It's a sieve made of straw, rodents, and dreams. Every time it snows or rains, you start a new game of, is that water or rat pee? You remember that time last winter when the roof half collapsed under the weight of snow. The family had to huddle under the table until someone climbed up and poked at it with a pitchfork. Aunt Gilda still talks about how her bunion predicted that storm. You suspect the bunion is the smartest one in the family. You try to go back to sleep, but it's impossible. Your left buttocks is numb, and your face is cold enough to make you wonder if it's still attached. You look toward the ceiling. There's a spider clinging to one of the beams. It's motionless, maybe frozen, maybe just silently judging your life choices. Same. At least you're not on night stoking duty. That's when someone has to wake up every 2 hours to poke the fire and throw more fuel on. Except there is no extra fuel tonight. You're down to one armful of sticks and a cow pie you swore you wouldn't burn because it's needed for fertilizer. But desperate times and all that. You remember your grandfather telling you, "It's colder now than when I was your age." Of course, his grandfather said the same thing. And now you're saying it, even though you're barely 15. Cold has a way of aging people very, very fast. You finally give up on sleeping and stumble to your feet, the blanket dragging behind you like a royal cape if royal capes were covered in goat hair and smelled like cabbage farts. You tee-top over sleeping siblings and avoid the pigs. Mostly. You still step in something. You're just praying it's mud. You approach the wall, pressing your hand to the wooden frame. It's covered in condensation that freezes on contact. You trace a shape into it, a crude sun maybe, or just a smudge from your frozen finger. You sigh, and then it happens. A chunk of thatch falls from the ceiling and lands squarely on your head. Not snow, not ice, just old, dry straw mixed with a dead beetle. You shake it off. Welcome to medieval home ownership. If the rats don't evict you, the ceiling might. You recall a fringe tale, old folk wisdom whispered by grandmothers with suspiciously few teeth, that stuffing dried nettles in the roof could keep out both spirits and squirrels. You tried it once. The squirrel just used the nettles to make a more aggressive nest, and the ghost, still around, probably cold too. Someone coughs behind you. It echoes off the bare walls. No insulation, remember, just a thin crust of organic matter and wishful thinking. You walk over to the fire pit. There's barely a glow. You prod it with a stick. Ash rises into the air like ancient snow. There's a lone ember hiding in the ashes. You feed it a bit of kindling, twigs, some dry moss, the edge of an old sandal no one wears anymore. You whisper a silent prayer to Saint Brigid, protector of hearths, or maybe to Saint whoever of not freezing to death. Honestly, at this point, you'd pray to a lukewarm turnip if you thought it might help. The ember flares, just a little. Enough to give the room the faintest hint of orange glow, enough to remind you what fire could be if you had more than 2 sticks and a sacrificial potato peel. You sit beside it, hands outstretched, trying to absorb the heat like a sponge. The pigs grunt. One farts. You sigh. And outside, the wind howls again. It's not even midnight. By the time the second rooster crows, which is the peasant version of hitting the snooze button, you're already being crushed under a pile of limbs, blankets, and what might be someone's foot near your neck. Morning doesn't begin with sunshine and birdsong. It begins with your younger sister elbowing you in the ribs because someone wet the straw. Welcome to medieval co-sleeping. It's not cute, it's not cozy, it's a survival tactic. You peel yourself out from under the pile like an overcooked lasagna noodle, every joint stiff with cold and maybe regret. Sharing a bed isn't optional, it's law. Well, not an actual law, but in the brutal logic of winter nights, body heat is gold. You sleep shoulder to shoulder, sibling to sibling, sometimes 3 generations deep. You might be cuddling your grandmother and your cousin at the same time. It's a full house, and a very smelly one. Your mother's already up, stoking the fire with something that may or may not be dried sheep dung. Her breath puffs visibly in the air like she's a dragon on a budget. You shuffle over to the fire pit. She motions for you to wake the others. You poke your older brother with a stick. He grunts. You poke again. He rolls over and tries to take the blanket with him. You wrestle it back. It's not much, but it's the only reason your fingers didn't freeze off last night. One by one, everyone groans awake. The baby starts wailing. The toddler pees. Again, someone sneezes. And someone else is definitely cooking onions already. It's not even sunrise. Historians still argue whether large peasant families shared beds due to necessity or tradition. You don't argue. You know the answer. It's called not freezing to death. You might not like your cousin Gertrude, but she's warm and doesn't snore as loud as the pig. So, she gets a spot next to you. At night, you all pile in like firewood. The youngest gets shoved in the middle, less likely to freeze or roll off. The elders claim the outside edges, stoically facing death with nothing but a thin wool shirt and that one blanket that's been mended 50 times with love, and goat hair. There's no privacy, not even a curtain. Your whole family has seen every part of you that can be seen, and possibly a few that shouldn't. It makes puberty extra weird. Your bed is a shared mattress stuffed with straw. Some nights you find a mouse in it. Other nights you hope it's a mouse. The lice don't bother you anymore. They're practically part of the family. Sometimes you get lucky and sleep with a feather pillow. Not yours. You borrowed it from Aunt Matilda when her gout acted up. She threatened to hex you if you didn't return it. You're not superstitious, except at night, when your breath freezes mid-air and you remember her creepy dolls. When the temperature drops dangerously low, you all go full burrito mode, wrapping yourselves like meat in a shared pastry. Your feet tangle, elbows jab, and someone always ends up snoring into your ear. Still, it beats sleeping alone. I once heard a tale of a man who had his own room, just one person per bed. It sounded extravagant, unnecessary, suspicious. Must have been a monk or a noble, or just deeply unpopular. The animals outside don't get beds, of course, but some sneak inside. The family cat sleeps near the hearth, curled like a smug pile of fluff. The dog finds the warmest body and uses it as a mattress. The chickens don't bother with comfort, they just squat wherever gravity allows. You scratch your arm. It itches. Everything itches. The wool, the lice, the cold. The sense that someone sneezed in your hair last night. Maybe it was you. Then comes the worst part, leaving the bed. It's a sacred moment. The fire hasn't caught properly yet. The floor is a frozen slab of compacted earth, hard as stone and twice as cold. You tiptoe across it like it's lava, only to realize lava would be warmer. You reach for your clothes, which you left, folded, read crumbled, beside the hearth. They are not warm. They are frozen in the shape of you. Slipping them on feels like dressing in wet bark. You shiver, pull the tunic over your head, and wince as the coarse wool scratches your skin like a judgmental grandma. But it's the only thing standing between you and the chill. That and your goosebumps, which have developed their own personalities by now. Breakfast is boiling. Sort of. Your mother stirs a pot of thin barley gruel, occasionally throwing in a turnip chunk for flair. She mumbles something about St. Eustace and curses the frost under her breath. Everyone else hovers around the fire like moths, trying to get just close enough to thaw without singeing their eyebrows. And then something wonderful happens. Your father reaches into his cloak and pulls out an extra blanket. It's old, patched, and smells faintly of mold, but it's a second blanket. He wraps it around the younger kids like a medieval superhero. You clap slowly. Everyone else does too. It's the most exciting thing to happen all week. Well, that and the time the neighbor's goat gave birth in the middle of the common path and the baby goat ran into the ale barrel. That was hilarious and delicious because it added flavor. Your little sister curls into you, sniffling. Her nose is red. Her fingers are cold. You wrap your arm around her. She sighs into your chest. You think about how fragile she is, how this cold could take her away in a single night if the fire went out and nobody noticed. That's the thing with winter. It's not dramatic. It doesn't come with trumpets or blood or screaming storms. It just lingers, silently, constantly, wearing you down, taking warmth one breath at a time. So you hold her a little tighter. Let her take what heat you have. Let her sleep a few more minutes, because come dawn, she'll be out there too, just like you. The fire is dying again. It always does this around midday, flickering, stubborn, like an old man who refuses to wear socks. You kneel beside the hearth, blowing softly into the ash while shielding the ember with your palm. It's a delicate dance. Too much air and the ember dies. Too little and you're left with cold stew and colder toes. There's no roaring blaze here, no cheerful crackling. What you've got is a cow dung and twig situation, smoky, sputtering, and barely up to the task of warming your hands, let alone a room. But this is the medieval peasant's version of climate control, a half-lit fire pit and fingers crossed that no one accidentally sits on it. You toss in another handful of fuel, not wood. Actual logs are rare enough to make you weep. Wood is for people with forests, or money, or both. Instead, you've got dried dung cakes, lovingly shaped last summer by you and your siblings during poop patrol duty. Very glamorous, very eco-friendly, smells like regret. Still, it works. Barely. The smoke curls up through the hole in the roof, and for a brief moment your cheeks stop stinging from the cold. You wiggle your fingers and swear you feel warmth. Could also be hallucination. You're not ruling anything out. Fire is everything here. It cooks, warms, lights, and protects. In some villages, the hearth is literally sacred, blessed by priests, watched over by saints, and occasionally bribed with bread crusts. You remember when a visiting friar said the hearth is the heart of the home. You thought he was being poetic. Then you tried living without it for one night. Now you believe. Historians still argue whether hearth designs were consistent across medieval Europe or wildly regional. What they do agree on is this: without that fire, you might as well dig your grave now and make it cozy. You glance at the iron pot hanging from the hearth hook. It contains soup, which is a generous word. Really, it's boiled water with whatever you found that didn't try to bite you back. Today it's turnip greens, 1 carrot stub, and something that might be a bone. Not entirely sure if it's meat or just a polite gesture from the neighbor's dog. The heat from the fire rises in waves and you inch closer. You'd crawl inside if you could, But last time you tried, you singed your eyebrows and coughed for 3 days. Lesson learned. Behind you, someone opens the door. A gust of wind roars in like it's late to a party. The flame flickers in protest. You spin around and slam the door shut again. Born in a barn, you mutter. Irony noted, since you practically live in one. The door isn't exactly sturdy. A few uneven planks, barely held together with nails and prayers. You stuffed a bit of cloth into the cracks weeks ago, but the mice keep pulling it out for their own cozy little winter mansions. You don't blame them. If you could live somewhere else, you would too. You throw on your working cloak, which is mostly just a heavy sack with a neck hole, and head outside for more fuel. Not wood. You already know better than to expect that. But maybe some dry sticks, or old straw, or moss. Anything flammable that isn't one of your siblings' toys. Outside, your breath fogs in the air again. The sky is the color of boiled flour, flat, gray, and promising nothing good. The ground crunches underfoot, half frozen, half wet, and wholly unpleasant. Your boots, or what's left of them, squish like they've absorbed 3 centuries of misery. You scout the hedgerows. There's not much left. Winter stripped the land bare weeks ago. You find a handful of brittle twigs and a chunk of old bark. It'll burn. Probably. Maybe. Or maybe it'll just smoke for 3 hours and stain the ceiling with soot art again. As you return, you pass the village center, where a small group huddles around the communal fire pit. Every village has one, meant for gatherings, storytelling, or just surviving together like damp squirrels. Today, old Thomas is holding court, telling tales about the winter of '57. Or was it 47? Doesn't matter. The point is, it was worse. It snowed sideways, he declares. The sheep turned to statues. I saw a bird freeze mid-air. Someone coughs. Someone else farts. Everyone nods solemnly. That's the vibe. You toss in your meager fuel into your apron and trudge back. The fire's still smoldering. You drop the twigs on top and hope the flames like your offering. Eventually, you get it going again. Not big, not impressive, but enough. Enough to keep the stew from turning into ice. Enough to keep your fingers from falling off. Enough to make the baby stop crying. You stare into the glow, hypnotized. It's beautiful, in a grimy, survivalist kind of way. A tiny, flickering miracle. It reminds you that warmth still exists, even if it's rationed in flickers. Your father joins you, settling down with a long sigh. He stretches his hands out, palms open to the heat. His knuckles are swollen, cracked, rimmed with dirt that's never coming out. You watch the firelight dance in his eyes. Remember when we had that big ash log? He says quietly. You nod. You do remember. It burned for 3 whole nights. You'd stayed up just to stare at it, played shadow puppets. Didn't even need to wear gloves inside. It was like a holiday, a big, warm, soot-covered holiday. You both smile at the memory. Then the pot boils over, spitting hot soup onto the hearthstones. Your mother yells. You scramble to lift it off the hook. The dog whines because he didn't get a lick. Just another day, trying to keep the fire alive. One of your neighbors once said that winter is like a slow fight. You don't lose in a day. You lose in inches, in small failures, in the moment you let the ember go out and decide it's too much work to reignite it. But not today. Today, the fire still burns. Weakly. Stubbornly. Just like you. You crouch beside the hearth, poking the embers, carefully spreading the coals to keep them alive through the long frozen hours. The children are bundled together under layers of coarse wool and linen, pressed close for warmth. Every breath you take clouds the air, and the bitter wind groans through the wooden shutters despite the straw you've packed into every crevice. Outside, the world is glazed in frost. Even the trees seem to groan under the weight of the cold, their bark cracking like old bones. You do not venture out unless you must. The animals must be checked, and so you brace yourself, throwing on a cloak made from patched sheepskin and stepping into the biting dark. The snow crunches under your feet as you push through the drifts toward the byre. The oxen, huddled in the corner, snort at your arrival. Their breath steams in the frigid air. You murmur to them gently, running a hand down their flanks to check for cold spots. You cannot afford to lose them. If they freeze, your plowing season dies with them. You lay out extra hay from the loft above, where dried bundles of last summer's cuttings are stored. The floor is slip with frozen muck, but your boots are thick with layers of cloth and hide. You've learned how to wrap them tightly to keep the cold out. Your mother taught you, just as hers taught her. Back in the house, you kneel and add twigs to the hearth. The coals flare and spit, and slowly the room brightens. Beside the fire, a clay pot of barley pottage simmers low. You used the last of the dried onions and salted pork last night, but tonight a bit of crushed garlic and a precious pinch of wild herbs from the stores must do. The flavor is stronger than the food itself, but it's enough to warm empty bellies and fill the silence. As evening deepens, you and your kin huddled under blankets and pelts. Your eldest brother carves wood near the firelight, shaping pegs for a broken cartwheel. Your youngest sister sings softly, a tune passed down from generations, one that speaks of spring returning and the thaw that will one day come. There is no rush in these nights, only survival. You mark time not with clocks, but by how low the fire burns, or when the rooster crows against the deep dark. The nights are impossibly long, stretching like cloth too thin to cover the whole sky. But you endure, because you have always endured. Sometimes, on the clearest, coldest nights, the stars blaze brighter than any candle. You step outside once more, arms crossed tight, and glance upward. The sky seems nearer, pressing down, filled with ancestors and omens. You whisper a quiet prayer to the saints, to the spirits of the land, to anyone who listens, that the ice will not claim your crops, your animals, or your family. When the cold grows too sharp, you retreat to the warmest part of the house, the bed box, a wooden frame with sides high enough to trap heat from the fire, filled with straw and covered in layers of cloth. You sleep shoulder to shoulder with your kin, sharing heat, hearts beating close, and dreams tangled together. Some nights you wake from the cold. Your toes ache despite the layers. You reach out, finding the warmth of a sibling's back or a mother's arm, and press closer. You do not complain. Complaining doesn't make the cold go away. You just breathe through it, feel the steady pulse of life beside you, and eventually drift back into a restless sleep. When morning comes, if it can be called that, the light is blue and faint. You rise stiffly, joints aching from the damp chill, and begin again. You stoke the fire, check the animals, mend what was broken the night before. You scrape frost from the shutters and breathe on your fingers until they move freely. The church bell tolls faintly from the village. You'll make your way there today, bundled tight, for the feast of St. Agnes. The priest will speak of warmth beyond this life, of eternal spring. You listen, lips chapped and stomach tight with hunger, and you believe him. You have to. It's belief or bitter despair. At the gathering, villagers speak in hushed tones. Someone's baby fell ill from the cold and passed in the night. Another man's roof collapsed under snow. You nod with them, offer what comfort you can. You're all in this together. No one survives winter alone. Still, even in grief, there's community. Bread is shared. A boy plays a tune on a simple reed pipe. The baker's daughter brings out a candle shaped like a dove, saved for this day, and lights it while everyone watches in silence. In its soft glow, you feel a flicker of hope, as warm as any fire. When the sun finally begins to return, not in full glory, but minute by minute, you notice it first in the way shadows shift earlier, and how the chickens stir from their roost sooner. A thin sheen of meltwater appears on the eaves. The villagers whisper it first. The freeze is turning. You don't trust it first. You keep your layers close and your fire burning. But deep inside, you feel it too. Something shifting. Spring will come. Not today, not tomorrow, but it will. You've survived another night. One more than you feared you might. And that is enough for now. The freeze begins to loosen its grip, though it doesn't go quietly. You notice it first in the way the earth groans when the frost thaws by midday, only to harden again at dusk. The snow doesn't fall so often now. It lingers instead in dirty heaps along hedgerows and thatch eaves, grimy from smoke and foot traffic. The air smells sharper, like wet bark and old manure thawing from beneath the ice. Your body, stiff from months of huddling, longs to stretch and move. With the worst of winter past, you shift your efforts from simply surviving to slowly preparing. The soil will need turning, but it's not yet soft enough. Instead, you begin repairing. The fence around the garden has collapsed in places. The coop door's hinges have rusted. The thatch above the doorway sags, sodden and dark. So you wake early and work late, hammering pegs, twisting rush cord, rubbing animal fat into old leather and wood to preserve it. Every task is a rhythm. Tap, twist, wipe, tie. You don't complain. The work gives you warmth, purpose. You've known winters that killed men simply because they stopped moving. The village, too, begins to stir. You notice more people on the track that leads to the church or market square. Children return to the stream, breaking apart the ice with sticks, squealing when it cracks too loudly. The baker's boy rides past you with a sack of barley flour, his cheeks red and eyes bright. Life trickles back. Still, food is scarce. The winter stores have dwindled dangerously low. In many homes, the last of the salted meat is gone, and only dried peas, onions, and mold-speckled rye remain. You boil everything longer now, hoping to make meals stretch. If you're lucky, a neighbor shares what they can. A heel of dark bread, a few pickled turnips, an old hen that's no longer laying. Foraging becomes important again. You take a woven basket and move cautiously along the woodland edge, looking for early shoots, nettle tips, wild garlic, chickweed. You know what's safe and what will leave your belly writhing in pain. You pick only what you need, leaving enough behind for the earth to recover. Your sister joins you, laughing at the mud that clings to her shoes. You let her chatter. It reminds you there's still joy in this life. Quiet, fragile, but very real. At home, you clean the finds, slice what you can, and add them to the pottage. The smell is sharp and green, like spring trying to push its way through your stew pot. Your mother tastes it and nods. No words, just that slow, tired nod. Approval hard-earned. The snow melts unevenly. Paths become sludge. Chickens wade through puddles. Buckets line the floors, catching steady drips. You can't afford to replace the wood, so you patch it with straw and pitch and a whispered prayer. Your hands are raw and cracked, but you keep moving. The sun lasts a little longer each day. The bell from the chapel echoes farther now, not muffled by snow or fog. Even the birds return, not many, but enough to make your heart lift when you hear the first warble in the morning. A neighbor falls ill, not from cold, but from the toll winter took. Thin, coughing blood, eyes sunken. You visit, bringing what you can. A cloth soaked in vinegar, a balm made of goose fat and lavender. She grips your hand with what little strength remains. Her daughter watches from the corner, silent. You know what this means. You've seen it before. Sometimes winter takes its dead in spring, when hope returns and defenses are down. You stay anyway. You hum a song she might remember. You help change her bedding. You light a candle and set it by her bedside. Not all healing is done by herbs. Later that week, the priest tolls the bell twice. Once for her, once for another who couldn't last the thaw. You gather with the others under a pale sky, faces turned down, the mud sucking at your boots. There are no grand coffins, just shrouds, just earth, just grief and survival standing side by side. But after the burial, you return to work, because the land doesn't wait. You cannot afford to stop. Your tools come out, spade, hoe, mattock. The ground is still stubborn, but it softens by noon. You begin turning it, slowly, methodically. Your back aches, but it's the ache of promise, the ache of something coming back to life. You look up, wiping sweat from your brow with a dirty sleeve, and see your brother planting early beans along the southern edge of the field. He whistles as he works, a tune your father used to sing. You join in, barely audible over the crows calling from the treetops. The next day you return to the field, then the next, and the next. You plant what you can. You patch what you must. You hold your family together not with words, but with action. That's how it's always been. Some nights are still bitter. The wind howls and the shutters bang loose, but you are not afraid. You've lived through worse. You've held warmth between your hands like a candle and kept it alive. You've seen joy come from scraps. You've known sorrow, and you've stayed standing. You lie awake sometimes, listening to the faint creaks of the house, the quiet breathing of those around you, and the fading cries of the wind beyond. You think of all that was lost, all that survived, and all that must come next, because you know this truth deep in your bones. The cold never lasts forever. You are a peasant. You are poor in coin, but rich in knowing how to endure. You have fire. You have earth. You have hands that know how to build from nothing. And above all, the thaw has begun in earnest now. You rise before the sun as always, but the darkness isn't as deep as it was weeks ago. A pale blue tint stains the horizon. Birds chatter in the hedgerows. The air still stings, but it no longer bites. In the field, the furrows you and your kin have turned glisten with dew. Earthworms coil near the surface, and the scent of soil is rich and alive again. You kneel down and press your fingers into the loam. It gives easily now, pliable, willing. It's ready. Planting becomes the rhythm of the day. peas, onions, turnips, and beans first. You carry woven sacks of last year's seeds, carefully dried and stored in linen pouches tied with string. Every seed feels sacred. You count them out with care, placing each one by hand. Nothing is wasted. The children help, awkward but eager. You show them how to press seeds gently into the earth, not too shallow, not too deep. You tell them the stories your elders told you, of how the seeds sleep, how they dream of the sun, and how they must be fed with patience and hope. You feel pride watching them listen, their faces smeared with soil, eyes wide. You are not just feeding mouths, you are planting memory. You are passing down survival. Your neighbor calls across the fence, asking if you've seen the new shoots in the alder grove. You nod. You've seen them, pale green tips poking through the woodland floor. It's a sign. The wild herbs will return soon. You'll gather burdock, dandelion, and sorrel. The women will boil them into spring tonics, meant to drive out the winter heaviness from the blood. Inside, the house smells of scrubbed wood and ash. The floors have been swept, the hearth whitewashed. Spring cleaning, they call it now, but you know it's older than any name. It's ritual. It's wiping away death to make room for life. You open the windows for the first time in months. The wind rushes in, cold but welcome. The fire no longer roars day and night. Now it crackles gently, a companion rather than a guardian. You still cook over it, but the meals change. No more endless pottage. You stew nettles, wild garlic, and the first eggs of the season. A hen has started laying again. A miracle, every time. The hens were thin after winter, their feathers dull, but now they scratch greedily in the dirt, clucking with renewed purpose. Even the goat bleats more loudly, pacing in the pen. She's heavy with kid. You watch her closely, ready to help when the time comes. Every life is precious. Every animal is a friend. You've whispered to them in the dark, shared your firelight with them. They've kept you fed, clothed, and alive. In the village, the mood shifts. Faces once pale and silent with hunger begin to color again. Men joke as they pass one another on the path. Women trade tips about planting and soap making. Children play freely, tossing stones or chasing beetles between fence posts. The priest announces the date of rogation days, when all will walk the boundaries of the parish, blessing the land and asking God to protect the crops. It's part prayer, part memory. People will walk in a long line, touching trees and stones and streams, naming them aloud so that no one forgets what belongs to whom, and what belongs to all. You look forward to it, not just for the tradition, but because it means the community walks together, side by side. No one is a stranger during rogation. Even old rivalries are set aside. You'll share bread, sing psalms, and tie ribbons on trees. Some call it superstition, but you know better. It's hope wrapped in ritual. It's protection stitched by footsteps. On the way home one evening, you pass the old widow's cottage. Her roof still sags, but you notice someone has patched the wall with new thatch. A neighbor, perhaps, or the blacksmith's apprentice who's been visiting more often. You smile. Even now, love finds its way. You stop at the stream, watching it rush over stones freed from ice. You kneel, scoop water into your hands, and drink deeply. It tastes sharp and clean. You splash your face. For a moment, you let yourself be still. You survived winter. You carried your kin through darkness. You buried friends, but you did not break. You are here, and that matters. That night, your dreams are no longer filled with snow and wolves and cold silence. You dream of green hills, of sunlight on your back, of a harvest so full you cannot carry it all. You wake with purpose. The days stretch longer now, and the sun lingers past supper. You work into the evening, tying saplings, checking for rot in the beams of the barn, sharpening your scythe, even though the wheat is months away. The anticipation burns hotter than any hearth. One morning, your sister runs into the house, shouting, "The goat has birthed twins!" You rush out, heart racing. There they are, two wet, bleeding bundles, wobbly but alive. Your mother cries. Your brother laughs so loud it startles the chickens. You kneel and touch them gently. Their fur is soft as moss. They smell like milk and earth. Life, new and trembling, wrapped in fragile bones. A promise made flesh. Later, you sit beside the fire, holding the smallest kid in your lap, feeding it from a cloth-wrapped bowl. You hum without thinking, the same tune you've hummed since childhood. It's not a lullaby, it's a spell, a thread of comfort that winds through time. Outside, the wind shifts. It no longer moans, it whispers. Spring is not just arriving, it has arrived. And still, you are not idle. For every new beginning brings its own challenges. Too much rain, not enough bees, a sick sheep, a broken cartwheel. You take it all in stride, because you are no stranger to hardship, and because now, unlike in the depths of winter, the world works with you, not against you. You are a peasant, and you are planting the future with your own hands. The earth is waking. Where once snow lay deep, and the land lay silent beneath its icy shroud, now green pushes up from every crevice. Your boots are soaked not with frost, but with dew. Each step leaves a print in the soft, breathing soil. You welcome the squelch, the mess, the labor it brings, because now is the season of labor. From before dawn to after dusk, your day is filled. First, the animals, milking the goat, gathering the eggs, turning the compost, checking for fleas and sores. You learned long ago that even the smallest illness can spread like fire through a pen. Vigilance is survival. Then the fields, your fingers wrapped around a hoe, slicing through weeds, breaking clumps, leveling soil. You work in rows, singing as you go. Not loudly, just enough to keep your rhythm. Beside you, others join in, sometimes a hymn, sometimes a body tune passed through generations. It doesn't matter. The song is the same. We're still here. You plant what you can, more beans, carrots, leeks, and early barley. The weather is fickle. A warm morning can turn into a hail-slashed afternoon, but you've learned to read the clouds like books, the wind like whispers. You tie your cloak tighter, adjust your cap, and keep going. There is no pause in a peasant's spring. The men mend carts and sharpen plows. The women dye cloth in great steaming vats, stirring in crushed leaves and bark. Children gather wood fire or help scatter ash in the gardens to enrich the soil. Everyone has a hand in the season. There's no idle soul, not when hunger still lingers in the bones. And hunger is still real. Though the green has returned, most of it is still promise, not nourishment. You rely on careful rationing of winter stores, early wild herbs, and milk. The hunger now is different than midwinter. It's less desperate, but more impatient. Your body expects food now. Your stomach growls not just in emptiness, but in anticipation. The markets reopen in the nearby town. You walk half a day, basket in hand, cloak over your shoulder, breath rising in the crisp air. Others pass you on the track. Farmers with chickens, women with cheese, a tinker with bells on his cart. There's noise again, color, exchange. At market, you barter what you can. Buttons, a skein of spun wool, a carved spoon. In return, you bring back salt, a lump of hard cheese, a strip of smoked fish wrapped in cloth. Each item is a victory, a thread that ties you back to the world. On the way home, you pass the stream again. The banks are slick with moss, and frogs leap at your approach. You pause, listening to the birds. Larks mostly, but sometimes the harsh call of a crow, or the soft hoot of a nesting owl in the barn rafters. Life, in all its noise, has returned. In the evenings, your family gathers around the fire, not because it's needed for heat, but because it's home. The flames flicker on the beams overhead. The youngest child plays with wooden toys. Your brother sharpens tools. Your sister braids rushes into a mat. Sometimes stories are told. Tales of saints and miracles, tales of wolves and winters long past. One old story tells of a winter so cold that breath turned to snow mid-air and the sky cracked open like glass. You all laugh, though quietly. You know the kind of winter that births such legends. Spring festivals begin soon. The Feast of St. George, May Day, celebrations of fertility, renewal, love. You begin preparing ribbons, cleaning your best tunic, trimming your hair. The young girls gather wildflowers to weave into crowns. You watch them and remember when you were that age, when spring was a time of magic, not just labor. But even now you feel something stir in you. Not just survival, something more tender. You catch someone's eye across the field. They look quickly away. Your hands tremble for a moment, not from cold, but from something just as old. The first lambs are born, and their cries echo in the dark. You help with the births, your arms bloodied, your breath held until the small bodies move. You clean them, wrap them, place them beside their mothers. Every life brings a strange, private joy. Every lamb, a small defiance against death. You begin watching the weather more closely, keeping track of the wind, of the buds on the trees, of the birds that arrive, and those that haven't yet returned. The old ones say that if the swallows nest low, rain is coming. If the oak blooms before the ash, it'll be dry. You don't question it. Nature speaks. You've learned to listen. One morning, you wake to find the first shoots of barley have broken the surface of the field. You fall to your knees beside them, not in prayer exactly, but something close. Your calloused hand hovers over the green. It is a small thing, but you know what it will become. Bread, beer, life. You whisper thanks, though no one hears. By now your hands are rough, your face sun-touched, your back sore. But you are alive, awake, useful. The rhythm of the land moves through you like a second heartbeat. You are no longer hiding from winter. You are racing with spring. And the race is just beginning. Because soon it will be summer, and with it will come sweat, growth, Long days under a hot sun, nights alive with insects and heat and restless dreams. But for now, you work, you breathe, you plant and sing and mend and walk and feed and water and wait. You have no riches, no titles, no armor, but you are strong. You are rooted. You are a peasant. And you have survived again. Summer begins not with a bang, but a shift, subtle at first. The mornings are no longer stiff with chill. Instead, the sun peers through your shutters earlier each day, and the breeze carries the scent of new blossoms. Your cloak hangs more often than it's worn, and your sleeves are rolled higher than before. You work with sweat on your brow and dirt under your nails. The land is no longer waking. It is awake, alive, and demanding. The fields grow thick with green, the barley stretches tall, the beans blossom with delicate flowers, and the peas twist around their wooden stakes. The wheat is slower but strong. It sways in the wind, a golden promise still weeks from fulfillment. You walk among it often, fingers brushing the stalks, listening to the whisper of their growth. There is no sound like it, quiet but powerful, like breath from the earth itself. Now begins the most laborious time of year, the tending. You rise before dawn and often fall asleep after dusk. Each day is filled with weeding, watering, checking for pests. Rabbits are a constant threat. You've built little traps, not to catch them cruelly, but to drive them away. Birds, too, especially crows, circle overhead. You wave them off with long poles or bits of cloth tied to sticks. There's no time to waste. Every hour of sunlight must be used. Idle hands are rare, and a lazy day is a dangerous one. A single missed task could cost you a week's work. But there is beauty, too. Wildflowers bloom along the paths. Bees hum in the hedgerows. The trees are full now, leaves casting shade over the stony lanes where children run barefoot and laughing, cheeks red, hands sticky with berry juice. There are berries everywhere now, black currants, elderberries, gooseberries. The forest gifts them freely, but you must act quickly. The season is short, and you know how to preserve them. You dry some, stew others into thick jams. Mix a few with honey to create a sweet tart spread for bread. It won't last long, but nothing does. That's the nature of the land. Abundance followed by absence. In the village, music begins to return. Fiddlers, flutists, voices raised in late evening songs. The men work shirtless in the sun, their backs bronzed and blistered. The women braid herbs and hang them to dry under eaves. Sage, rosemary, mint, and thyme. You pass them on your way to the well, and the air smells like healing and dinner all at once. You attend your first summer feast of the season on the Feast of St. John. Bonfires are lit in the fields. Young men leap through the flames, daring each other higher. Girls toss flower crowns into the river, watching to see how fast the current takes them. You do too, not for superstition, but for joy, for the laughter that bubbles up from your chest like spring water. Someone touches your shoulder. You turn, and it's him, the one you've shared glances with over these past weeks. He offers you a cup of ale, warm and sour, but you take it. He doesn't speak much, but his smile is soft. You walk with him for a while, just past the bonfire's light. The moon is high, the air warm. When he takes your hand, your heart stumbles. Not out of fear, but something simpler, hope. Later, under the stars, you don't speak much. You don't need to. There's a comfort in shared silence, a wordless understanding, the kind born not from luxury or poems, but from long days, calloused hands, and kind eyes. The next day you're back in the fields. No one mentions the festival. That's how it is. Celebration, then silence. Back to labor. Back to life. The animals grow restless in the heat. The goats seek shade. The hens scratch listlessly. The cow swats flies with its tail, lowing at the midges that never seem to leave. You bring water more frequently now, filling troughs with buckets drawn from the well. Your muscles ache, but it's the good ache, the kind that means you're doing something right. You notice your skin darkening under the sun. Your hair feels coarse from the dust and heat. But there is a glow to your face now, a strength. You wear the season like armor. The fields are not all success. You lose a row of beans to a sudden storm. The wind rips through in the night, flattening stakes and drowning shoots. You wake to mud and wreckage, and your heart sinks, but not for long. You've lived too many seasons to be defeated by one bad night. You rebuild, replant, mend, always mend. Sometimes you dream of winter, not with longing, but with awe. How distant it seems now. The cold, the dark, the silence. You survived it. And now, as you stretch beneath the sun, as your hands are stained green from weeds and your arms shimmer with sweat, you realize something deeper. You were made for this. You were not built for ease. You were shaped by hardship, carved by necessity, tempered by repetition. And now, in this fullness of sun and sweat, you bloom alongside your crops. Evenings are slow now. The fire burns low, more for light than for warmth. Meals are lighter. Cheese, herbs, eggs, flatbreads cooked on stones. Sometimes there's meat, a bird caught, a fish trapped, but mostly it's simple, nourishing, enough. Your father leans back on his stool, wiping his brow with a cloth and sighing deeply. If the weather holds, it'll be a good year. You nod, but you don't hope too loud. That's dangerous. The land gives, but the land also takes. You've learned to be thankful without assuming, grateful without demanding. Before bed, you step outside. Just for a moment. The stars are brilliant, the moon is full, the fields shimmer with a silver mist, and somewhere an owl calls. You stand in the doorway of your thatched home, hands on your hips, and breathe it in. This is not wealth. It is not glory or legend, but it is life, honest, hard, and beautiful in ways few will ever understand. You are a peasant. You are not waiting for comfort. You are working for it. And in this season of toil and sweat and song, you are richer than a king. You awaken long before dawn. There is no sun yet, just the creak of timber and the hush of snow pressing on the roof. The coals in the hearth have dimmed to a dull red, barely enough to chase the cold from the air. Your breath fogs with every exhale. Another night survived, but now comes another day to endure. You move quickly, tugging on layers of wool and flax, garments that haven't properly dried for days. Damp hems, stiff sleeves, but they're warmer than nothing. Beside you, your youngest stirs. You cradle them briefly, sharing warmth, before setting them on the stool near the hearth. You use the iron poker to stir the embers. If even a tiny coal glows, it can birth flame again. Dry moss, shavings from the woodshed, a twist of straw, you coax them all into a bundle and breathe life into the fire. The flicker grows, its orange glow slowly revealing the smoke-stained beams overhead. While others in the house begin to rouse, you step outside. Morning watch is yours today. The air bites like iron, sharp and dry. The village sleeps in a hush, broken only by a distant rooster and the sigh of snow falling from thatched eaves. You trudge to the edge of the settlement, past hedgerows rimmed with frost. You pause. Your job is simple. Look, listen, and return. But more than once, watchmen have seen wolves moving like shadows in the tree line. And sometimes not wolves at all, but hungry men, bandits driven mad by famine, risking a raid for bread or salt. The frost crunches underfoot, and your breath smokes like a chimney. You scan the fields, dotted with blackened stumps and brittle hay. Nothing stirs. The cold is like a grip on your chest, slowing your breath, making your fingers throb beneath your mittens. But you hold fast. A peasant's survival depends on watchfulness. Your house may be small, your food plain, your rights meager, but what you protect is everything. Back home, the fire is going strong again. Your mother has heated water in a blackened pot, steam curling like spirits to the rafters. Porridge thickens with cracked barley and goat's milk. And today there's even a sprinkle of dried fruit, saved from last summer's harvest. A feast in winter terms. The baby squalls. You scoop them up, setting them by the hearth where it's warmest. Your older children begin their chores, grumbling softly as they fetch water and sweep straw. Even your youngest is handed a small broom made from hazel twigs. Everyone must contribute, for warmth is as much a communal effort as an individual one. Later, you gather bundles of brushwood for the midday fire. You move through the woods with others, eyes alert for traps you set the day before. One woman found a hare yesterday, stiff with cold but still edible, the kind of fortune that staves off another hard night. You check your snares, baited with apple peel or crushed oats. Nothing yet. Back in the village, the smith's fire already roars. Sparks fly as he hammers iron that's as hard as your resolve. Children run errands, returning with frost-bitten cheeks and shining eyes, delighted by the sight of icicles and the crunch of snow. Laughter echoes down narrow lanes. Even now, in the harshest months, joy persists. At mid-afternoon, while others mend harnesses or spin thread near the hearth, you sit with a needle and patch your husband's tunic. The cloth is rough, patched many times already, but strong. You sew in silence, listening to the fire pop. Outside, smoke rises from chimneys, curling into a sky already darkening. Twilight comes early in winter. You prepare for night with solemn ritual. Embers are banked, water vessels are sealed to prevent freezing, and children are wrapped tightly with the best furs you own. Before sleeping, you hang herbs over the hearth, wormwood and yarrow, both to dry and to ward off illness. Someone whispers a prayer. Your grandfather said the cold could hear, and if you didn't show respect, it would turn on you. You lie down with your family close, limbs tangled beneath the thickest blanket. Beneath you, straw rustles in the mattress. The house creaks and shifts as temperatures plummet again. But the fire holds, and for now, so do you. You close your eyes and the wind howls outside, but inside there is warmth of breath, the smell of wood smoke, the soft sigh of sleep. The village survives one more night. So do you. You awaken with the gnawing emptiness in your stomach. Not the kind that demands a feast, but the kind that you've come to know intimately, the kind that whispers, "Survive." In the depths of winter, hunger is no stranger. Every mouthful is a calculation. Every morsel is a decision. Your home has no pantry in the way the Lord's do, no endless barrels of salted meats or foreign spices. But what you do have, you guard with the same care a knight guards his blade. In a small corner, cool and dark, You've hung cured strips of pork, salted during the last slaughter. A few jars of pickled root vegetables remain, sealed with wax. In a ceramic pot lined with cloth, a stash of lentils waits. Dried apples strung from the rafters sway gently when the wind hits the cottage. Winter is not only a test of endurance, but of planning. The harvest months are long past, and if you miscalculated back in September, if the beans were blighted, if the rains came too early, then the cold weeks now will stretch into hunger. You gather what's left of the ground rye bread. It's so hard you must soak it in warm broth before chewing. Still, it fills your belly, and that is enough. You portion a sliver of cheese, its rind waxy with age, and slice a pickled turnip for tang. The children eat slowly, chewing each bite with exaggerated care. They know better than to ask for more. Later, you go to the granary, not the Lord's stone storehouse, but your small communal structure built with the other villagers. Elevated from the ground to keep the rats out, its wooden slats whistle with cold wind. Each family has a stake in the grain within, and arguments over access aren't rare. You bring your share home wrapped tightly in cloth, your fingers aching from the cold. You use a hand mill to grind some of the grain into flour, a slow, exhausting task. The children take turns. Eventually, you mix it with cold water and knead it into flat cakes that can be baked over stones near the fire. Not much flavor, but warm, and that's something. Food is sometimes stretched by foraging, even in winter. You remember where the wild onions grew, or where frozen rose hips still cling to thorny branches. With any luck, there might still be nuts buried beneath snow where squirrels forgot them. You and the other women go looking, wrapped in shawls, baskets tucked under arms. On good days, a man returns from the woods with a rabbit. On better days, a wild boar. But today, you return with only pine resin and a few blackened mushrooms. You clean them carefully, not every fungus is a friend, and boil them until they're soft enough to eat. There is no feast tonight, but there is soup, a thin broth, made rich only by repetition. Every bowl tastes of what came before: yesterday's bones, the week's turnip, last month's herbs. The flavors are layered like memories. In a way, every bite honors those who cooked before you. And sometimes there is sharing. Your neighbor's child was sick this week, and they have no more honey for remedies. You give them a spoonful from your small jar, harvested during late summer when the bees were thick in the clover. You don't expect repayment. Kindness is its own currency. Still, there are days the cold wins. Some nights you go to bed with only broth in your belly and dreams of warm bread and sweet figs. You dream of the fairs in spring when peddlers come with spices from lands you'll never see, with salted cod and almonds and bright fruits dried in the sun. You clutch your shawl closer as you sleep, the straw beneath you rustling. Tomorrow, you'll eat again. Maybe well, maybe poorly, but you'll eat. And that is the rhythm of winter survival. Endure today so that you might fight tomorrow. Because in the peasant's life, food is never just food. It is warmth. It is hope. It is life measured one spoonful at a time. The sun barely rises before it begins to set. That's how it feels now. The days are short and gray, and even at midday, the sky glows dim like candlelight behind thick cloth. But you still rise and work, because winter does not pause the needs of a peasant. It simply reshapes them. Though the soil sleeps beneath its blanket of frost, your work does not. You may not plow or sow, but there are repairs to make, tools to sharpen, animals to feed, and fuel to gather. The cold slows everything, but never stops it. You begin with the animals. You step into the byre where your cow stands, her breath steaming in the cold, her flanks shivering slightly despite the thatch and straw. You muck out the floor with a wooden shovel, your fingers stiff inside woolen mittens. She gives less milk now, her body too busy keeping warm, but every drop is precious. The chickens huddle in their corner of the coop, feathers fluffed. You break the ice in their water bowl with a stick, refill it, and toss them a small measure of grain. They cluck their thanks. You gather the few eggs they've laid, smaller than in summer, but warm in your hands. It's a miracle they still come at all. The pigs, if you have them, are less dainty. They grunt loudly, pressing against the wooden slats. You give them scraps and mash, and they eat with single-minded hunger. Some neighbors slaughtered theirs already, unable to feed them through the winter. But you held off. You're waiting. Waiting for leaner weeks, or a holy feast that calls for meat. After tending to the animals, you take up your tools. The hoe, the spade, the plowshare, all dull from use. You grind the edges by hand, scraping stone against iron until sparks dance. The smith can help, yes, but every visit to him is a trade. A few coins, a promise of labor, or some stored grain. In winter, even wood becomes work. The dead branches gathered in autumn won't last forever. You bundle yourself tightly, take the hatchet, and go to the copse where you and others have permission to gather. The trees are bare, creaking softly in the breeze. You walk carefully. Snow hides holes and frozen roots. You swing the axe again and again, splitting thick logs for the hearth and snapping twigs for kindling. And then there's thatching to be done, patching holes where the wind creeps in or where snow has melted its way inside. You climb onto the roof with your brother or son or neighbor, your feet steady on the icy beams. You work with bundles of straw, your fingers raw, lashing them to the wooden frame. Below, someone steadies the ladder. You joke to stay warm. You curse the wind. But you work. Inside, the women card wool beside the fire, teasing soft tufts from coarse fleece. Spindles turn with steady rhythm, thread twisting with practiced care. Some of it is for mending. Other thread will become warm tunics or barter for food. One woman knits mittens, another a cap for her child, who watches with wide eyes and chews on a bit of cloth. At night, there are chores too. The sheep need checking. The weakest may freeze if left alone. You carry a lantern out, the flame flickering, barely illuminating the path. You trudge through knee-high snow, heart thudding, listening for signs of fox or wolf. When you return, cheeks red and hands aching, the warmth of the hearth feels like salvation. Even illness cannot pause the work. If your back aches or your chest burns, you wrap more tightly, move more slowly, but still you move. For the land does not pity the sick. It does not care if you're weary. The work must go on. But with the hardship comes quiet pride. You survive each day by your own labor, your own breath rising against the cold. Your hands are calloused and cracked, yes, but they are strong. They shape your days, carve out your future. This land, frozen though it is, has taught you more than any sermon or scroll could. It has taught you how to endure, how to wait, how to work when all you want is rest. And so tomorrow you'll rise again before the sky turns pale, and again the day after that, until the ground thaws, until buds return to the branches, until the snow recedes and the plow bites deep once more. But for now, you gather your cloak, your breath, your courage, and return to work. You cannot survive winter alone. That is the oldest truth you know. It is whispered in every creaking beam and echoed in every frost-bitten field. Even the strongest must lean on others, for cold does not just chill the flesh, it isolates, divides, and tests the heart. But not all is hardship. In winter, community becomes warmth, kin becomes fire. And so you gather close, not just around the hearth, but around each other. Your family is your first circle. Each person has their task, no matter how small. The child who gathers sticks for kindling, the grandmother who tells stories while spinning wool, the father who returns from the woods with numb hands and a bundle of branches. Everyone gives, everyone takes. Even the frail old uncle who cannot walk far watches the children and sings them the songs of summers past. Beyond your walls there is the village, a patchwork of huts and hopes, stitched together by mud paths and memory. The thatchers help repair roofs. The brewer gives out hot ale during feast days. The priest offers blessings and comfort, sometimes herbs. The midwife checks in on the expectant mother, even if the snow bites at her ankles. And always, people trade. Carrots for flax, goat's milk for honey, labor for a loaf of bread. It is not perfect. Sometimes tensions flare. When food is low, even friends grow wary. A man accused of hoarding rye. A woman blamed for cursing a neighbor's cow. But these are sparks, not fire. Grudges cool in the face of shared need. Because in the end, one truth remains. No one gets through winter alone. You remember a night, not long ago, when a neighboring family's roof collapsed under snow. Without a word, the village gathered. You lent them a place by your hearth. Another brought food. Children slept in laps while adults worked by torchlight to mend the damage. It was not charity, it was survival. Because one day, it could be your roof. Even joy, rare as it is in these months, is shared. A birth brings quiet celebration, a new life in defiance of death's long shadow. The baby is passed from hand to hand, swaddled in every blessing the village knows. An old woman whispers that the child has strong lungs and a stubborn cry, good traits for a cold world. At night, when the wind howls, stories bind you tighter than any blanket. Around the hearth, you hear the old tales again. The knight who walked barefoot through snow to save a starving widow. The fox who tricked the ice witch and brought spring a day early. The lost child who followed the North Star and returned with a pouch of summer grain. And there is laughter, real, sharp, sudden. Someone imitates the Reeves' crooked walk. A girl sings a rude song about the Lord's spoiled son. Even you laugh, your face warming despite the cold. For a moment, you remember what it feels like to be more than just tired, more than just hungry. Winter sharpens everything, even love. You notice your partner's quiet glances, the way they brush snow from your shoulders before you enter, the way they keep your favorite bowl near the fire. You notice your children's resilience, how they find games in the snow, how they turn icicles into swords and frozen puddles into kingdoms. You notice the way your village carries each other. A cart shared, a candle passed, a burden lightened. You survive not because you are alone and strong, but because you are together and human. Tomorrow someone may need help digging out their door. Someone else may share a sliver of smoked meat because they remembered your child coughing. And if the worst comes, if illness or wolves or fire visit someone's door, you will gather again, shoulder to shoulder. Because in the coldest months, the greatest fire is not in the hearth. It is in the hands that hold, the voices that comfort, the hearts that refuse to turn away. You wake in darkness, not just night, but the deep, consuming black that comes only in the heart of winter. The fire has gone low. The silence is complete. Even the wind has stopped. For a moment, it feels like the world is holding its breath. This is the coldest time. Outside, the snow lies deep. The trees, heavy with frost, crack in the stillness. No birds sing. Even the crows have gone quiet. You rise slowly, careful not to disturb the sleeping children curled near the hearth. Your feet find the floor, hard, bitter cold. The frost has crept inside the house again. You press your hand to the wall. The stones are slick with ice. There are days like this, you know. Days when the cold presses into your bones and makes you wonder if spring will ever return. The sun, when it rises, is thin and pale. The sky is more gray than blue. You do your work, but your heart drags behind you. You find yourself staring at the horizon, searching for something, a change in the wind, a softer edge to the snow, a bird, a sign, a miracle. It is then that you turn inward, to prayer, to stories, to the quiet voice of faith that says, "Hold on." The village chapel is small, barely more than a stone hut with a timber cross, but it stands strong, warmed by candlelight and the breath of the people packed inside. You gather there with the others when the cold grows too loud, not just for mass, but for warmth, for silence shared, for meaning. The priest, wrapped in wool and fur, speaks not of wealth or judgment, not now, but of endurance, of light returning. He reminds you of the holy days still to come, Candlemas, when the candles are blessed to drive away the dark, Lent, when even the lords must learn hunger. He speaks of Christ in the wilderness, of 40 days without bread, without warmth, without comfort. If he endured, so shall we, the priest says. You look at the candles, flickering. Each one a small flame against the dark, each one a promise. But still you are afraid sometimes. Everyone is. You hear the whispers when the fire dies low. About the old man who hasn't been seen in days. About the tracks in the snow that didn't belong to any dog or deer. About the cough in the child's chest that won't go away. Death walks more freely in winter. Everyone knows it. It is not shouted, but it is known. You light a taper from the hearth and carry it to the window. Just for a moment, you hold it up and let the flame flicker against the glass. It's a small act, but it feels important, as though your little light is part of a larger battle. The children ask questions. When will it be warm again? When will the bees come back? You tell them, soon. The sun is turning back to us, and you mean it, not because you know, but because you must believe. And then one morning you notice something. The snow is still there, the sky still gray, but there is water dripping from the eaves, a slow, rhythmic drip, a softness in the air. You see a patch of earth where the snow has thinned and the mud breathes beneath it. You do not cheer, no one does, but you notice. You tell your wife, your brother, the neighbors. One nods, another smiles, just barely. You still have weeks to go. The hardest snows sometimes come in late winter. But the light has changed. The worst has passed. Or it will soon. That night, the fire is warm again. Not just from wood, but from hope. And when you lie down beside your family, you do not shiver quite so deeply. You awake to birdsong. Not the full-throated chorus of summer, no, not yet, but a single chirp, then another, tentative, as if the birds themselves aren't sure whether it's truly time. But it is. You sit up quickly, heart racing, and listen again. There, a skylark maybe, or a blackbird. You rise, open the creaking door, and step into a changed world. The snow still clings to the ditches and shadows, but in the open fields it has begun to recede. The wind carries not the sharp bite of death, but the smell of wet earth, of moss waking beneath the frost. The first green shoots pierce the brown. Not much, but enough to change everything. Your children run barefoot into the slush despite your warnings, shrieking with joy. They throw handfuls of snow into the air like blessing dust. Their laughter is bright, bouncing off the barn walls and rising like smoke. You check the beehives. Miraculously, a few have survived. Weak, slow, but alive. The queen lives. You whisper thanks. At the edge of the field, you kneel and dig into the thawing soil with your fingers. It's black and cold, but loose. You break it open, let it fall between your hands. This is what you've waited for, what everything was about. Not just surviving the cold, but waiting for this, the return of work, the return of purpose, the return of life. Others come to the fields, too. The old men lean on staves and nod, remembering years when the thaw came later or never. The younger ones begin fixing harnesses and greasing wheels, the oxen low in their stalls, sensing movement ahead. A plow is pulled from where it was stored and cleaned with care, like a sword before a war. You gather with the others by the edge of the common land. You speak little. There is no grand speech, just glances, a shared nod, a moment where everyone stands still and breathes. Then, as one, you begin. The plow bites the ground with a sound like thunder. Earth folds over on itself, rich and dark. Steam rises from it as the sun touches it for the first time in months. The rhythm returns. Step, pull, turn. Seed will follow, then rain, then green. In the evening, as smoke rises from every chimney and the stars prick the sky, the village feels alive again. Not just surviving, living. There is bread on the table, still hard but flavored with wild garlic from the woods. There is milk in the pail. There is laughter in the street. Old songs are sung again, not the slow, aching tunes of winter, but the fast, foolish ones that children dance to, arms swinging and boots splashing in puddles. That night, your partner brings you a small gift, a single snowdrop, plucked from beside the chapel, white as linen and trembling in a jar of water. You smile. You remember what it means. It means spring is truly here. You sleep warm, not just from the fire, but from what you feel in your chest, something deeper than comfort, stronger than rest. You survived. And not just you, your people, your village, your animals, your soil, your spirit. There will be other winters. There always are. But now you know, when the days darken, when the cold returns, when the night seems endless, you have already learned how to endure it. You have already made fire from damp wood, bread from hard grain, light from shadow, joy from hardship. You are a peasant, and you are not weak. You are the root that does not rot, the ember that does not die, the hope that waits beneath the frost, patient, hidden, and eternal.